One day of honesty can rewrite your next 10 years. There comes a moment in every person's life when the mask becomes too heavy to hold. The pretending, the justifying, the sugar-coating, it wears you down in ways you don't even notice at first. You wake up one day realizing that your life feels smaller than your dreams, quieter than your potential, and slower than the pace your heart wants to move. And yet you keep going, telling yourself, it's fine, I'll figure it out eventually. But the truth is, eventually never comes on its own. It arrives the day you stop lying to yourself. That is the day everything shifts. Honesty is not about beating yourself up. It's not about guilt or regret. It's about clarity, the kind of clarity that cuts through years of confusion. The moment you sit with yourself and say, this is the exact reality I'm living, and I'm responsible for changing it, something awakens within you. Suddenly, the excuses lose their power. The blame you used to place on people and situations begins to fade. The fog lifts, and you finally see your life with accuracy. And yes, it hurts. Honesty often does. It shows you the habits that drained you, the choices that delayed you, the patterns that held you down. But that same honesty also reveals your strength, your resilience, your untapped potential. It shows you that you are not stuck. You just stop being truthful with yourself. Once you confront the reality of where you are, you unlock the ability to choose where you'll go next. That is why a single day of honesty can rewrite your next 10 years, because clarity is the foundation on which every transformation is built. When you know what needs to change, the next steps become unavoidable. And in that moment, you no longer live by default, you live by decision. People think fixing a life requires dramatic changes, a new job, a new city, a new opportunity. But the truth is far more empowering. Massive life transformation begins with small, brave decisions made quietly but consistently. Decisions so simple, so ordinary that at first glance they don't look life-changing at all. But they are, because every small decision carries a message. When you choose discipline over distraction, you send a message to your future. I'm coming for you. When you choose growth over comfort, you send a message to your identity. I'm becoming someone new. When you choose responsibility over excuses, you send a message to the world. I'm no longer repeating the patterns I was born into. That's how cycles break, not through luck, not through sudden miracles, but through tiny acts of courage executed today. The decisions you make right now might seem insignificant, but they stack, they build, they compound. A 10-minute walk becomes a mindset shift. 1 hour of learning becomes a new skill. A single boundary becomes a new standard for your life. And eventually, these tiny decisions become powerful enough to break patterns that have lasted generations. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need one meaningful shift that changes your direction, and then another one tomorrow, and another the day after. Your environment shapes your destiny. Most people underestimate the quiet force that shapes their life every single day. Their environment. Not just the place they live, but the people they talk to, the habits they repeat, the energy they absorb, the voices they listen to. Your environment is like the soil around a seed. Even if the seed is full of potential, it cannot grow in toxic soil. And many people spend years wondering why they feel stuck, drained, unmotivated, or confused, without realizing that it's not their potential that's failing, it's their environment that's suffocating them. Think about how many dreams have died not because someone wasn't capable, but because they stayed around people who convinced them they weren't capable. Think about how many goals were delayed because someone kept living inside clutter, chaos, and distractions that made focus impossible. Think about how many people shrink themselves simply to fit into environments that were never meant to hold their greatness. And the heartbreaking part is, most people don't notice the damage until they step away from it, until they experience peace for the first time, focus for the first time, self-respect for the first time. Only then do they realize how heavy the old environment really was. The beautiful thing, though, is this environment can be changed in a single day. You can decide today that you no longer want to be surrounded by negativity or laziness or gossip or people who celebrate your weakness more than your strength. You can choose to declutter your space so your mind can breathe again. You can choose to follow voices online that inspire you instead of drain you. You can choose to build a circle that challenges you to rise, not collapse. And the moment you shift your environment, even slightly, your destiny starts shifting with it. Because when you place yourself in spaces where growth is normal, ambition is respected, and discipline is encouraged, something inside you begins to rise naturally. You don't have to force it. You don't have to beg for motivation. It becomes your default setting because your environment supports it. A new standard today creates a new identity tomorrow. There is a moment in life when you realize that change doesn't begin with a plan, it begins with a decision. Not a soft decision, not a temporary decision, but a defining one. A moment when you draw a line in the sand and say, I refuse to live below this standard ever again. That is the moment your identity begins to shift. Identity is not built in a year, it's built in a decision. A decision about who you're willing to be and what you're no longer willing to tolerate. The standard you set today becomes the foundation of the person you're becoming. And most people never rise because they keep negotiating their standards. They say they want discipline, but accept laziness. They say they want success, but accept excuses. They say they want change, but accept the behaviors that destroy it. But the moment you raise your standard, truly raise it, you reclaim your identity. You stop being the version of yourself that's tired, overwhelmed, frustrated, or lost. You begin to operate like someone who respects their future. And that single shift influences everything: your habits, your choices, your confidence, your voice, your path. Once you set a new standard, even the smallest actions begin to align with it. You wake up differently, you speak differently, you walk differently. Not because someone changed you, but because you finally decided who you are. A day of massive action can redefine your future. There comes a moment when thinking, planning, and dreaming are no longer enough. A moment when you realize that no amount of wishing will build the life you want, and no amount of hoping will replace the work that needs to be done. That moment is when action becomes the only language your future understands. And not just small action, not slow action, but massive, undeniable, life-changing action taken in a single day. People often say change takes time, and yes, growth takes time. Progress takes time, but the decision to change, that happens in an instant. Your entire life can start moving in a different direction the moment you stop waiting for the perfect circumstances and start acting with purpose. Because the truth is, the perfect moment will never come. You will never feel completely ready. The fear will never fully disappear. But action has a way of shrinking fear. Movement has a way of creating clarity. Progress has a way of building confidence. The very things you think you need before starting are the very things you actually gain after starting. Massive action is not about doing everything in one day. It's about doing the thing you've been avoiding for months. It's about making the call you keep postponing, starting the project you keep talking about, breaking the habit that's been draining your energy, walking away from the pattern that's been stealing your peace. It's about choosing one bold step that sends a signal to your life: I'm done being stuck. And what makes massive action so powerful is not just the result. It's the shift in identity that happens the moment you take it. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hesitates and begin seeing yourself as someone who moves, someone who follows through, someone who refuses to stay trapped in the same cycle another year, another month, another day. Think of how many people stay trapped not because they lack talent, but because they lack initiation. They wait for motivation to strike, not realizing that motivation comes after action, not before. Once you take that first bold step, the second becomes easier, the third becomes natural, and momentum begins to build one decision at a time. Momentum is a powerful force. Once you start moving in the right direction, life begins to open doors you didn't see before. Opportunities appear, energy rises, confidence grows. You begin to realize that the version of you who felt stuck wasn't weak. They were simply uninitiated. They hadn't taken the action that activates everything else. And that's why a single day matters, because it only takes one day of decisive action to undo years of hesitation. One day to rewrite your story. One day to set a new tone for your entire future. One day to finally show yourself what you're capable of when you stop overthinking and start doing. Massive action is the spark that ignites every transformation. It's the moment when your life stops being a dream you hope for and becomes a reality you build with your own hands.